Welcome back. You are tuned in to IBL, inspired by Onika, speaking on life and inspiring people. Hi everyone, and welcome back to episode 14, and the title is The Old School Days, We Need to Run It Back. So in today's episode, I'm going to be talking about back in the day, those times when, as a kid, you already knew certain things that you needed to do. Nobody had to tell you. And don't let your mother, don't let your father come out there calling your name. So things like, for example, when the street lights came on, you already knew you need to come in the house. Don't let nobody start calling you to come in the house and those lights on and they don't see you. If they ain't got their eyes on you, then you late. When those street lights came on, you already know it's time for me to go in the house. And the thing about it too is back in those days, back in my era anyway, I'm a 70s baby. So in those days, if your parents were, they weren't around you, if the neighbor or, your friend's mother saw you doing something crazy or saw you hanging with a bunch of people you shouldn't be hanging with, they're going to tell you about it. They're going to chastise you first, and then they're going to tell your mother. I saw her. She was over there with so-and-so. They're going to chastise you first and tell you, you need to go home. You don't need to be with this bunch of people. You need to go home. You know better. Then, after they chastise you, they're going to go tell your mother later. Okay, so don't think you're getting away. Okay, now some other things that we need to run back from back in the day is, so you know how we want to go to our friend's house, and before our mother let us go, she want to know your friend's mother's name, where they live, and she want her phone number because she want to speak to her first, for one thing, to make sure that it's okay for you to go over there, for two, to make sure that that's actually where you're going. You don't just let your kids go anywhere and not ask any questions. It's like nowadays, some parents, they don't even know where their kids are, who they're hanging out with, where they're going, what they're doing. But back then, it's like, okay, you want to go to your friend's house, especially if it's someone you never met before. So you want to talk to the mother and make sure that it's cool that your child come over there, and, you want to know whether or not they are going to a place, and you feel comfortable with it as well. But nowadays, it's just like, kids just be all over the place and nobody asks any questions. I mean, it's just crazy. I don't understand that. And then another thing from back in the day that we need to run back is making sure that we ask our kids when they come home, what did you do in school today? What did you learn today? Do you have homework? And making sure that we are checking that homework, but, sometimes we just don't, we don't show an interest in what our kids are learning at school and what they're doing. We don't even ask if they have homework. And what happened to checking it? You make sure, like, okay, you have homework. What did you have? Let me see it. Let me make sure you did it. Let me check it. What happened to that? And then another thing too is back in those days, when it was time to eat, especially if you were outside, especially if you were outside playing, you have to come in, you got to wash your hands, and then you're going to sit down at that table, and your mother, she's not going to ask you what you want for dinner. You're going to eat what's on that plate in front of you, plain and simple. No questions asked. And guess what? If you don't like what's on that plate, then you're going to sit there for a minute. And, if you don't like it, you're just going to go to bed hungry. Oh, well, we're not asking you what you want for dinner. There was no choice in the matter. You're going to wash your hands, come and sit down at the table, and that's it. This is what we having. If you like it, good. If you don't, you're going to go to bed hungry. But it's like nowadays, it's like the kids are telling the parents, oh, I don't want that. I want something else. Okay, but you don't have a job. Okay, you don't work. This what we have. This is what my budget can afford. Okay, this what we have, plain and simple. But back in those days, you gonna come and sit down. You ain't gonna ask no questions. And then if you don't eat your plate of food, then you're not getting no dessert. That's out of the question. All right. The other thing from back in the day that we need to run back is before you get to go outside on the weekends or anytime, you got to make sure that your chores are done first. Okay, you got to clean your room, take the trash out, sweep the floor, do the dishes, whatever your chores are. You got to do those before you even look at your parents to ask if you can go outside. Now, I realize nowadays kids, they don't socialize, they don't talk to each other, they certainly ain't going outside to play, but at least you have to let people know if you do want to go somewhere, then guess what, you better make sure that your chores are done, you clean your room, you do those dishes, whatever it is you need to do. Don't even ask before you do those things because you already know what the answer going to be. And back in those days too, the parents, they had a look, they just had to give you the look, they ain't have to say a word, you already knew. So it's like, you know better, don't even ask. And then what about back in those days when it was a school night? You had a bedtime. So depending on how old you are, or what grade you're in school, you were going to bed every night, either 8 o'clock, 9, 10, maybe 11, if you're a high schooler. So, with no questions asked, you already know. All right, time to go to bed. After we watch this show, time to go to bed. You don't even say, like, oh, can I stay up? You already know. Time to go to bed. And that's how it should be. Because you think about it, if you just let your kids stay up all hours of the night, and see, nowadays, everybody has, they have gadgets and devices. They're on their phones, playing video games, or whatever they're doing. And let me tell you, Chuck D, he said it best. He was on an interview with Curtis Blow. Shout out to the Breakfast Club. They were on an interview. And Chuck D said, they're not teenagers anymore. They're screenagers. Everybody has a device, a phone, computer, or whatever. Everybody's on their device. So he called them screenagers. And then he was saying how the world is like, we're not citizens anymore. We're netizens. Everybody's on the internet, on their social media, posting all these kinds of things. And it's so true. And my thing is, if you have a child that's in school, it's a school night, they need a regular bedtime because sleep is very important. You think about your child is not going to do well in school if they don't have enough sleep. I mean, that goes for anyone, whether you're a child or not. So just think about how important it is to get that sleep. So in addition to that sleep that's very important, that's just like if a child is hungry and they in school, they're not going to be able to concentrate on their lessons because they're hungry. Their stomach is growling. They thinking about, they just hungry. They want something to eat. So, food is important. Also, sleep is very important because it just throws you off in so many ways if you don't get enough sleep. So these days, it's like when you tell your child to go to bed at their regular bedtime, take the phone. Like, give me your phone. Because all they're going to do is go in the room and be on their phone all night, and who knows how many hours of sleep they're going to get then. So, we just need to run back some things and just, set some rules and boundaries. I mean, this is crazy. And what about back in the day when you got put on punishment? If you had bad grades in school, if you did something you wasn't supposed to do, you disobeyed your parents, guess what? You're going to be on punishment. Okay, and that punishment means you got to stay in your room. You ain't going outside. You're not playing with any video games. If you do have any type of devices, you're not using none of that. None of it. But these days, it's like, you could get bad grades, but you're going to still get a new pair of sneakers for bad grades. You're going to disobey your parents and disrespect your parents, and guess what? You're going to still get some new clothes, or you're going to go shopping or get to do something fun with your friends. There are no consequences anymore. We need to run it back to those days. Like, look, we expect you when you're in school, you better get good grades, especially in those subjects when we know that you are getting good grades in this particular subject, and then all of a sudden you want to be lazy, you're not turning in your homework, or you turning it in late. So things like that, the kids need to know there's consequences for that. Okay, now another thing, now if it was something really severe and you about to get a beating, your mom or your whoever, they're gonna send you outside to go pick a switch. Y'all remember that? You got to go outside and pick your own switch so you could get a beating. And you better get one with the right thickness, too. Don't come back there. Don't play. Because they're going to send you right back out there like, come on now. I need a better switch than this. Now, I know not all parents believe in beatings, a corporal punishment, that type of thing, and that's perfectly fine. But I'm just saying, back in those days, yeah, you did something bad and you getting the beating. Oh, you gonna go out there and get me a switch, plain and simple. That's just what you do. Go get a switch, and like I said, don't play. If you try to come in there and you got some old crazy looking, they're gonna send you right back. So don't play. Now, the other thing too is back in the day, if you see a young girl, I'm talking about 5 years old, 8, 10, 12, even a teenager, and they doing these dances that are suggestive, like they rolling their hips or shaking their butt, dropping it down, and all those types of things, like twerking and stuff like that. You better not let no grown up see you doing that, because they're gonna slap you on the floor. Okay, they're gonna tell your mother, like, you know better than that. Don't you ever let me see you do that again. You're not supposed to be doing that. I mean, they be moving in ways, first of all, better than the grown ups, and they moving their bodies in ways they shouldn't know anything about. Why is that okay? Especially when I see people posting videos of that, like, look, and then they be showing off to their friends. They be like, look, girl, that's my baby. You see how she did that? Look at that. Mm-mm, mm-mm, uh-uh. Do not encourage the ratchet. That is just not the way. Why are you encouraging this behavior? At 5 years old, 8 years old, you showing everybody that'll listen. Like, look at my baby. Look what she did. Mm-mm. That ain't cute. That ain't cute. And then when the child grows up and they real loose with things, then you wondering why. Well, that's a part of it. You contributing to that. That's not cute. We shouldn't be posting that and showing off like, oh, look what she did. That's my baby. She did that. Mm-mm. There's something wrong with that. And you know it. So that's what I mean about, let's take it back to the old school days, plain and simple. We need to run it back, because we wonder why certain things go on in the world these days, and this is a part of it. It's like we encourage the ratchet. We don't make our kids do their chores on a regular basis. We don't have regular bedtimes. And then also where I lived, back in those days, our little town, we had a curfew. People had to be in the house by a certain time. That's just it. You had to be in the house at a certain time. Now, that was way back then. We're not doing that right now, but just saying that there are some things that, we need to do. And the thing about it is, people might have thought that, our parents were hard on us, because I thought my mom and my parents, that they were hard on me, but it's just all in the love, and it teaches you lessons in life, plain and simple. You can't just act like you don't care about where your child is, what they do, where they're going, who they're with. These are things, we need to be more present, and we need to concern ourselves with some of these things, because when a child feels like their parent doesn't care where they are, what time they come home, what they do, whether they go to school or not, that's really hurtful to a child, and that damages a child. And you may not see it right away, it may not manifest in a certain way, but just think about that. Now, there's a quote. I'm getting ready to close out this episode. I want to thank you all for listening. And the quote I want to leave you with is that parents may not be perfect, but they will always love you more than anyone else ever could. Just remember that. Parents may not be perfect, but they will always love you more than anyone else ever could. So just remember that, people. So I want to thank you again for listening. And that is the end of episode 14, Old School Days. Let's run it back. Until next time, stay well and be blessed. Thank you for tuning in to another episode. You can hear this and all episodes on the Podbean app, YouTube, and Listen Notes. Until next time, stay well and be blessed.